Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. I have to tell you, it's just one of those mornings. I know some of you have experienced this. I had a friend who used to say, to err is human, but to totally foul things up requires technology. It has been a morning where the technology all hasn't worked right, and there's a chance since that verse didn't work right, none of them will. And so I have 4 or 5 verses in. If they don't work, I'll just read them to you. And we will get by. It turns out they did have church before all this technology was invented, and we don't need it. So we'll keep going. And I'm not positive the clicker works either, so we'll keep trying that. My first few years in ministry were interesting, and it's partly because I didn't get a formal ministry education like a lot of ministers did. I went to Freed-Hardeman. I majored in history. I got a master's degree in education. I was a history teacher, and Kevin, I was a basketball coach because Mount Dora at the time was too small to have a football team, which was just that much smaller than Groveland. So I didn't know that I was going to be in ministry, and I was thrust into ministry when the youth minister at the church that I went to decided to quit. And we were volunteers in that ministry, and I got drafted to work in the youth ministry while they found someone else. And then a few months later, they came to me and said, "Hey, we're not going to look for anyone else. You're doing fine." And so I got into ministry as a full-time teacher, a part-time coach, and a part-time youth minister. And it went on from there. And so no one ever gave me any instruction on how to do a mission trip or how to plan stuff or any of that. I just kind of learned on the fly. And the first mission trip I ever went on was a mission trip to Honduras. And I got put in a room. It was like 6 guys going down. We flew a private plane, and if you've ever flown into Honduras, it is like somewhere between scary and terrifying because it's just in a bowl of mountains, and the runway is about from me to the door long. That's it. So we're landing in this little plane. They didn't have for some reason they didn't find the flight plan we had filed, and so they told us we couldn't land. And so the pilot, who was a friend of mine, got in and in broken Spanish said, "We're going to run out of fuel, so we've got to land." So my first experience on a mission trip was 6 little Honduran guys in formation with AK-47s marching out to our plane. And I thought, well, this is going well. And when I got there, they put me in the room with a guy named Raymond. Now, that was an interesting choice because at my church, he and I were not friends. And I knew him enough to not be sure that I wanted to be his friend. He and I were really different. We came up in different backgrounds. We had different occupations. He was a contractor and a construction guy. I was not. I liked literature and poetry and stuff like that. And so I'm down there on a construction mission trip. So I don't know. I just thought I was going to carry stuff around. And it's a guy who, honestly, he had kids in my youth group. He had been very critical of me in the past. And I thought, man, how did I get in the room with this guy? I'm just going to read and listen to my headphones. Like, I don't know this is not going to go great. So not only did they pair me up with him in the room, but I got paired with him on the job. And so we were making trusses for this orphanage that our church supported down there. And trusses, if you're not a construction person, are the wood things that hold up the roof. Learn that. And we were making them out of mahogany, which grows naturally. And that is a heavy, mean-spirited wood. It's not easy to cut. And so my job was to carry the wood to Raymond so he could cut it to size and then carry it back and put it on another stack. So I did a lot of wood carrying, and he started singing like Garth Brooks songs while he was working, and I'm thinking, now who is this guy? And we started joking around with each other, and by the end of the trip, he was one of my closest friends. And after that trip, in that church, you could say something bad about me, but you better not say it in front of Raymond Chapman, because he had my back. And I've talked as we've gone through this series about how some of these invitations overlap, but maybe the most overlap you're going to find between any of these two invitations is service and connection. Because when we serve together, we connect. Nothing brings a church closer together than picking up a hammer and going to work. Later that week, with the hammers, we were hammering a place in where we were going to attach the trusses, and Raymond was like, "Why don't you get up on the roof with me and hammer these in?" I'm like, "This is not going to go well. Like, I'm half blind already. I'm like, and so I remember thinking that dude could nail a nail in one hit, and it took me like 6 every time, and I was just like in awe of what he could do. And I just remember thinking, oh, there's a key to why we serve. If you've been here the past few weeks, you know we're in a series on the 6 invitations. And the idea behind this series, oh great, my papers fell on the floor. I'm telling you, it's going to be one of those mornings. The idea behind this series is that if you're going to be a member of a church, that means something. And really, church membership, there's nothing really in the Bible about church membership. Like, we know that Jesus planned for there to be worshiping communities. He even said to Peter, "Upon this rock I will build my church." Like, we know that. But there's nothing in Scripture that says anything about membership. And so as we think through membership, it's something we need to think through based on Christian principles in our context and see what God is calling to us to at this place and at this time. And so as we thought through it, we thought there are probably, it's not working. There are these 6 things. Go back one, Melissa. Or that one's fine. So worship, learn, connect, serve, give, and grow. And this week, we're on the idea of service, that we are invited to serve, and that means something, that you find your place to belong in a lot of ways when you find your place to serve. And so this morning, I want to take a look at just a few things about what Scripture says about service, and then I want to move through and talk about how we think about service as this church in connection with these Scriptures. So we're going to start at Matthew 25, verse 40. It was part of what was read this morning by Brett. It says this: "The king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did to me.'" Now, this is an amazing little scripture that he read, because this is Jesus talking about the sheep and the goats. And we don't talk that way a lot anymore, but Jesus was saying at the end of time, when the Lord comes in his glory and people are separated, this is how they're going to be separated. And he doesn't go into a lot of theology. He doesn't say, well, if you believe this about this one thing, then you're on one side. But if you believe this about that other thing, then you're on this side. He doesn't talk about any deeper theologies or intellectual assent to a certain set of propositions that you have. He split them up this way. Were you kind? Did you visit people? Did you feed people? Did you love people well? What were your acts of service? Because if you did that, the acts of service that we do are the acts of service to God. That the way we treat people is the way we treat Jesus. Jesus said, if you've done these to the least of these, you've done these things for me. That it's a way for us to worship and glorify the King by the way we serve others. And so when we talk about these things that we do, these mission trips that we do, one of the things that we have to think about in our missions and our service to others is this is not something we do to make ourselves feel better, and it's not something we do just for the community or just for connection, or all those things are secondary and tertiary to this one thing. The way we serve others is the way we serve Jesus. And so that's why we do it. That's one of the reasons we do it. In John 13, verse 14, he also says this. He says, "Now that I, the Lord your teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet." That Jesus, at the Last Supper, he came in, and I've preached on this before, he came in, and the first thing he did was wash the feet of the disciples. And they were uncomfortable about it, and as usual, anytime there was discomfort in the disciples and the apostles, Peter usually was the one who gave voice to that discomfort. And he said, I don't want you to do this. And Jesus said, I must. And he wrapped a towel around his waist, and he washed their feet. He did the job of a servant in their culture by washing the feet of the dinner guests. Now, again, that's fascinating. I don't know if you remember, but in Christmas time, I thought one of the most fascinating things is the fact that God revealed God's self as a baby. That what we look at when we look at God first was revealed to us as a baby. But as profound as that is, this is, I think, as profound, is that when we look at Jesus, we're meant to see God. Paul calls him the image of the invisible God. And what we see in God, about God through Jesus is that Jesus had a towel around his waist and was on his knees washing the feet of his disciples. Like, that's what we're supposed to think about when we think about God. Jim McGuigan said this, and if you've never read Jim McGuigan's little book, The God of the Towel, it's a beautiful little book. It was published when I was a kid. It was one of the first formative Christian books that I read. He says this, he said, for Christ's service wasn't a spiritual ladder to success in the same way that if we're willing to serve a while, we'll get power later. It wasn't a performance so that he would be rewarded. It was his character. And I love that. The character of Jesus was service. And we are called to serve in many different ways. Even Paul in Galatians says it this way: you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one commandment: love your neighbor as yourself. That the entirety of the law is wrapped up in our service to our community and to one another. And because of that, it's important for every church to think through, what does that look like in our context? And I want you to understand that the rewards of your service are beautiful, and that they go both ways. And if anyone's ever been a part of service to anyone, you know that there's a reciprocity to that service, that in serving someone else, you're actually getting something back in return. And when you're serving along with others, something is formed where you're getting back in return. And that is because I truly believe that our humanity is wrapped up in each other. And we're meant to be serving one another. Wayne Mueller says it this way: as we serve others, we are working on ourselves. Every act, every word, every gesture of genuine compassion naturally nourishes our own hearts as well. For it is not a question of who is healed first. When we attend to ourselves with compassion and mercy, more healing is made available to others. And when we serve others with an open, generous heart, great healing comes to us. That there's this reciprocity, there's this beautiful healing, and that when we seek to heal others, we in turn are healed. And we don't do it for selfish motives. We don't do it so that will happen. We do it because we're commanded to and we're called to, and it gives God glory. But in the process, if we do it right, something amazing happens inside of us as well. And that's the beauty of this story. That we are called to be servants, and we are called to be served, and we are called to wash each other's feet. That our humanity is wrapped up in each other's. And our success as a church is wrapped up in the success of our city. So, as we transition to how we think about it, let's think for just a moment about how we serve at Northwest and what are the ways to serve. And I want you to understand, if you're a member of this church and you're here or you're listening online or you're thinking about becoming a member or whatever, I think this is great information for you to have, because we'll talk a lot about these things individually as they come and go. But we don't do as good of a job at talking about them together as one kind of mission and one kind of vision for what our service looks like in this church. So this morning we want to think about the big picture and what this looks like. And then afterwards we're going to have a missions fair where you can get to know some of these ministries a little more intimately. But I want to start off with the missions and outreach of this church because I think they are that important. Now, almost everything we think through in missions and outreach of this church comes from this little verse in Acts chapter 1. And Jesus, it's one of the last times he's with his disciples, and he's about to ascend into the clouds. And at his ascension, before he goes up to be united with God, he says this to his disciples in Acts 1:8. He says, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." That you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And in this passage, you see that our witness, our service to others starts locally, but it moves out from there. That if Jesus was been saying this to our group in our time, in our place, what he would say is, when the Holy Spirit comes on you, you will be my witnesses in St. Pete and Clearwater and in Florida and the Caribbean and to the ends of the earth. That there's this local, regional, and global aspect to our outreach. And so one of the things we've tried to do, and when we think through missions and outreach, is honor that local, that regional, and that global mindset when we think about our missions. A couple other things. One of my deep desires, and when we think about missions and ministry, is to go deep as much as wide. Like, there are a lot of churches that try to do 1,000 things, but when you do that many things, sometimes you get so spread out that you can't go as deep in those things as you want to. And so as we've thought through this, we want to do fewer things better. We want to be able to go deep and have real relationships in our service. And so the list may seem unimpressive at first, but I want you to hang in there because those things that we're doing with deep relationships, and they fulfill a deep need, and they're partnering with other organizations that are doing it well. So many churches try to go out and kind of do their own thing, kind of make something up from scratch, and for a lot of different reasons, and sometimes things are successful and sometimes they're not. But the truth is, in this city and in our region and globally, there are people who are already doing amazing things in the name of God. And one of the best things we can do as a church is to come along those sides, to find places where God is already working and go join those places and partner together in the kingdom. So a lot of these places will have either an indigenous minister like our global missions, or they'll have some sort of organization that's working every day and that will partner with those times and times that make sense. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's start locally with our local missions, the stuff we're doing around here. And the three that probably we've been most involved in the past 2 years are Cadence House, Family Promise, and the Florida Dream Center. Let's start with the third one. The Florida Dream Center is an amazing organization here in town, and they are dedicated to ending those who experience poverty and those who experience homelessness, and really coming alongside those people and making sure that they can make progress in their lives. And I think it was probably Tom and Sandy Peoples that first told me about the Florida Dream Center, and the more I've gotten to know about it, the more I've loved this organization. So when we called the Florida Dream Center and said, what do you need? What they really needed was people that helped them pack up food on Saturdays to take, that then goes out into the community and helps people who are underserved or don't have access to healthy food. Now, we've done this for a couple years now. It's a lot of fun. It's super early on a Saturday morning. But other than that, it's lots of fun. And we have packed boxes and boxes and literally tons of food that go out. And it's not one of those missions where you get the feel good from it because you don't see the people actually get the food. It's backing up and upstreaming from there, and we're just really packing it up, and that's because that's what that organization needed. But the amazing thing is how many friendships and new relationships have been built packing that food and how many conversations happen while you're packing food. And a lot of times some parts of the group will go to breakfast together afterwards and hang out. And it's really meets a need. And other than the early part, it's a lot of fun. And up until now, the way we've done it is we've moved it around classes and life groups so everyone would have a chance to experience it. But as we've gone through it, it's become more and more difficult. And so we're kind of changed the way we do it. And Dave Mustaine, who's one of the members who's come here within the last couple years, has agreed to be in charge of our connections with Florida Dream Center. And so glad that he agreed to that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a list of all of the people who want to go on a Saturday morning. I think we do the fourth Saturday of every month. And all the people who are willing to go, we want to get them on one list. And then Dave's going to he's going to schedule those people who can go from week to week. And you'll get an email from him if you're one of the people who are scheduled to go that week. And so when you are perusing the ministry fair today, one of the things you can do is go over to the Missions and Outreach and sign up if that sounds like that's something you want to do. And we need as many people who can do it as possible so we can move that around. And there's some people that would go every month, and there's some people who might get up at 5 in the morning once a year. But it's a great activity and something you can sign up for. The second one is Family Promise. And that is a newer ministry that we've been doing. Matter of fact, we had our host. We were the host church this past week for the first time. And if you haven't heard about this, it's a ministry for those people who are experiencing homelessness. And it's a way to get them off the streets until an organization can help them find a more permanent housing and a more stable situation. And the Family Promise is a nationwide organization. The local one here has been in existence for several years now, and they were looking for 13 churches so that churches only had to host the group one time every quarter. And it is something that we can do that's fairly easy for us to do, but makes a huge impact. And I say that because I've gotten to know a couple of the families this week as they were here. And one of the moms said to me this morning, she said, "This place is awesome. They've done such a good job of taking care of us." And to me, in that moment, it felt like me hearing, what you do for the least of these, you do for Jesus. And the thing I love about the Family Promise organization is nationwide, they have over an 80% success rate in getting people in more permanent housing situations. So it's effective and it's working, and they have the case management to go along with it. And so we're excited about our involvement in Family Promise. I talked to Kim. She said between 25 and 30 of our members volunteered in some way or another over the past week. And that as an organization, the Family Promise organization was very excited to see that much involvement and that much engagement so far. And then the first one is Caden's House. I've talked a lot about Caden's House. The best way I could describe it is a Ronald McDonald House for families. We have our second family there now. I was talking to the Betts, who is the couple in Nashville that we partnered with in Caden's House. And they were the family that originally came down and connected with this church and wanted to start this ministry. And Brad Betts said to me, "I can't believe how well this is going. This ministry is meeting every one of our expectations and what we dreamed and prayed for." And again, it's just ministering to someone who needs it. And it's a way for us to go deep. And I hope this continues to happen, but the first baby that was in Caden's House, baby Logan, we got a picture this week of how well he's doing. And it was nice to keep that connection with that family, even though they've gone back to Georgia. And these are 3 ways that you can get involved locally in what we're doing here. And all you have to do is sign the list, and someone will tell you how you can help. And so there's sign-up lists for all of these. Now, as we move local and we move to more regional missions, there are 2 that we're really excited about, and one of them is near and dear to my heart. Melissa, can we get the regional slide? There it is. All right, the first one you'll see is Mount Dora Children's Home. Now, several of you have heard of this. This is in Mount Dora, Florida. It's a children's home that's been around almost 70 years, I guess. And it is to help people, it is to help children who've been lost some sort of permanent housing situation, or even they have an adoption service, they have education for those children. And the reason this is so near and dear to my heart is in 1972, I was the child of a single mother, and she was a teacher in a place you've never heard of in Tennessee called Wartburg. And she was on her own. My mom is legally blind, and I was 3 years old. And Mount Dora Children's Home had a single mother program where they brought single moms in, they housed them, they gave them a job on campus, and their child could go to school there. And my mom was one of the first moms in the single mom program that was actually a teacher. And when I was 3 years old, my mom and I moved to Mount Dora. And I went pre-kindergarten through 12th grade at that school in Mount Dora. My mom eventually remarried. I spent a ton of my life there, even went back there and taught for 5 years. And so you can imagine my excitement when I moved to this church and found out that this church already supports Mount Dora. Not only supports it, has supported it for years. And I was thinking, well, good, I don't have to talk them into that. It's something we're already doing. And again, it's an organization that we've partnered with for years who are helping the lives of children. And to increase that, we've started talking to an organization called Manna Children's Home in the Dominican Republic. And again, having come from a church that had a close relationship with the children's home in Africa, this was something that I was really hoping we could find our way into, because there's this amazing thing that happens between a church and a home like this when you start to be able to go mission trips and see kids grow up and then become adults and contribute to society, and you start to see how that your support through the years have helped grow these adult Christians in these communities and kids that may not survive without these children homes. I got a text this morning from a young man named Ramsey Vatashi, who grew up in a children's home like this. And he was telling me about how he was about to finish college and how he was about to go into the working world, and wanted me to pray for him as he starts to make that transition. And just to see and to know his story, no, he wouldn't have made it without that. And so this is a children's home that Brittany and Chris Brush have gotten us in touch with. And I'm excited to say that one of the directors of that children's home, Paul Wirt, is going to be with us next Sunday. And during the Sunday school time, he's going to meet with anybody who wants to come into this room and do a presentation for that children's home. But it's a way for us to continue to connect and meet the mission of God. And finally, I don't have to tell you much about this one. Our global mission is Dino Russo. And this is someone who has been working it out for a long time in Greece and has been doing beautiful things in that mission. I don't think I've ever told this story, but one morning I was talking about Dino Russo and our connection with that ministry in Greece. And afterwards, my parents called me and said, "How do you know Dino Russo?" And I said, "Well, I don't really. I just know he's a missionary that we support and have supported for a long time." And in the 90s, my parents were missionaries in Bulgaria, which is very close to Greece. And there were times when Dino would travel around just to support the other small churches and missions. And Dino had actually been to my parents' church in Bulgaria to encourage them, years before I ever came to this church. And we've had a connection with that ministry again for a long time, and we will a long time. And when I first moved here, I started asking people, what are the missions we support? What are the things that this church supports? And not everybody knew the entire list, but everybody I asked knew Dino Russo's name. And so we're glad to continue to support that, and we hope to one day have some members of this church go over and visit that church and make that connection even deeper. Now, that's a lot. That's a lot of missions. But that's not even all, because we have youth missions. And our youth group goes every summer to a place and does mission work and gives God a good name in Atlanta and Nashville and other places that they've gone. We started last summer and we'll do again this summer something called Impact St. Pete, where we look for other ministries to get involved with and come alongside and help them. And we'll do those on Sunday nights, and we'll look for other ministries to hear about. And those specifically I've been talking to Joel about will be ways for our families to serve together this summer. And so every service organization isn't either the adults going or the teens going or their children going, but some things that we can do together. There's disaster relief. And one of the ways we've really served our community is through financial donations. And we've given, on top of our regular contribution and special contributions, we've given $38,573 in the last 2 years to disaster relief. And another $22,708 to the building fund in Greece, again, on top of what we've already supported. And this church has always been such a generous church. And then there's not only those, but then there's all the other ways that you can serve in our church through our ministries. And I've got a list of the ministries that we do up here, and it's a pretty big list. It's a pretty global list. I'm going to just read them quickly. We have adult education. We have youth group. We have Faith City and our children's ministry. Both Youth Group and Faith City are just fantastic ministries in our church. We have childcare and nursery. We have young adults. We have outreach and missions, which I've already told you plenty about. We have Helping Hands, which is this amazing ministry in our church formed by the Watsons that just helps people, that just helps them move and couches and furniture and whatever they need. And people make requests from that, and other people in our church go help them do it. We have the sewing ministry, and I get to, which sews dresses for young girls in third world countries, and they sew prayer blankets. And I get to be the one that delivers those prayer blankets sometimes to someone in our church who is sick or suffering. And not one time has anyone ever said, well, why'd they waste their time on that? Every single time they say, thank you so much. That means so much to me. And such a cool ministry. We have a meals ministry where people in our church help feed people who are coming out of the hospital or who have a special need. We have a fantastic shut-ins ministry where we do everything we can do to take care of those who can't get out anymore and can't get around. We have a seniors ministry, and one of the beautiful things, our seniors ministry just sponsored the Living with Loss workshop. And what a beautiful way to take care of some of those people in our church and in our community who's been dealing with loss. We have the worship ministry. We have technology ministry. We have people who welcome you every week as they come in and also are a welcome to our visitors. We have new members. We have life groups. We have fellowship. We have a prayer ministry that sends out emails. I've never been in a church that was more connected in prayer than this one. We have a benevolence ministry that helps people in our church and our community. We have a finance ministry who figures out the budget. We have a transportation ministry for people who can't get around as much. We have a medical ministry who thinks through what we look at as health and does things like blood pressure checks and flu shots. And we have a very important ministry of safety and security, which definitely needs volunteers right now, and you'll be able to sign up for that in the ministry fair today. And you'll be able to go out and see many of these ministries out in our ministry fair. And we're not going to have adult Sunday school, so you'll have plenty of time. And I invite you to take advantage of that. Take advantage of a time to get to know those ministries. Don't just try to beat the other churches to Chili's. Like, sit in there, visit with each other, and see about those ministries and pray about what God is calling you to participate in. There's no way for one person to do every one of these ministries, but all of us can do some of them. And again, it's a way for us to connect to God. It's a way for us to connect to our community, and it's a way for us to connect to each other. And it's a way for us to fulfill the mission to treat our community like we treat Jesus. And you may ask, why do we do all that? And there's several answers. And it's not just that our humanity is bound up in each other. But the real answer is that we live in a broken world. We live in a world that's broken. and we have the answer. We live in a world that needs healed. I mean, just turn on the news, watch television. A lot of you who know me know that I'm a citizen of two different cities. And while I live here and love St. Pete and wouldn't move anywhere else in the world, a big, huge part of my heart this week has been in Memphis, where we moved from. And if you've watched the news, you know that there was a young man named Tyree Nichols who was beaten to death by some police officers this past week in Memphis. And it has been so bad and so damaging to the community, and the community that I love very much has been hurting. And I've gotten 4 or 5 phone calls all week, and almost everybody who's called me has asked me, what can we do? What can be done against such a terrible situation? And they feel that the problems in Memphis are systemic and don't have easy fixes, and people are just searching for what can be done. And I've thought with people and brainstormed with people and prayed with people, and there are no easy answers. But I'm always reminded of this Mother Teresa quote, that none of us can do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. I think that's the answer. I think the answer is that we serve one another and we serve our community. We do as many small things for as great love, with as great love as we can muster. And when we do that, when we become a part of the healing of each other in our community, we point to a great healer who came to heal the world. When we soothe a hurting city and a hurting nation, and we do what we can to make peace, we point to a balm in Gilead that came to heal the sin-sick soul. And when we serve each other, we give God the glory. We don't do this for ourselves. We do this to make the mighty name of Jesus as famous as possible in this city and to serve others while we do it. If we do that, then we're doing what God has called us to. So as we think through our service this morning, let's think through it in this way. This is not for ourselves. It is to give God the glory. And if we give God the glory, then people will hear his name, and we will connect to each other, we will connect to our community, and we'll be connected to God. The invitation of God this morning is to serve his kingdom, to serve his pleasure and his goodwill on this earth, and to be his people. Let's stand and worship God together.